The highway stretched before me like a concrete ribbon, unwinding through a monotonous landscape of cornfields. It was supposed to be an adventure, a break from the soul-crushing routine of my office job, a chance to rediscover the freedom of the open road. But 3 hours in, the endless corn and the incessant drone of the engine were already grinding my rebellious spirit back to dust. Suddenly, a faded brown sign emerged from the monotony. "Scenic route," it proclaimed, with an arrow pointing down a barely visible dirt road. A jolt of excitement shot through me. Maybe a detour was exactly what I needed. The dirt road was swallowed by a dense canopy of trees, sunlight filtering through in dappled patterns. The air grew thick and humid, a stark contrast to the dry breeze of the highway. My phone sputtered and died, displaying a little red X where the signal bars once lived. A pang of unease pricked me, but it was quickly quelled by the thrill of exploration. As the afternoon wore on, the unease gnawed at the edges of my excitement. The road had narrowed, barely wide enough for my car, with overhanging branches brushing the sides like skeletal fingers. The scenery itself seemed to change subtly. The vibrant greens of the forest were dulled by a sickly tinge, and the chirping of birds had been replaced by an unsettling silence. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in bruised hues of orange and purple. I needed to find a campsite, or at least somewhere with a gas station. My unease blossomed into full-blown dread as I glanced at the gas gauge. The needle was hovering precariously low. Just then, a flicker of light pierced the gloom ahead. Hope surged through me. A gas station, my savior. As I drew closer, the light resolved into a dilapidated gas station, its paint peeling, windows boarded shut. Yet, from a single warped pump, a single flickering light cast an eerie glow. My common sense screamed at me to turn around, but the thought of running out of gas in the middle of nowhere silenced it. Pulling up to the pump, the silence pressed in, broken only by the rasping cough of the engine as I turned it off. Stepping out of the car, I felt a sudden drop in temperature, sending shivers down my spine. The air crackled with a strange energy. Approaching the pump, I noticed a single set of muddy footprints leading from the road and ending abruptly at the pump itself. No car, no one around. As I reached for the handle, a guttural moan echoed from somewhere within the boarded-up building. Sleep was impossible. Hunched in the driver's seat, every creak of the car, every rustle of leaves had me recoiling. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror, constantly scanning the pitch-black woods. I could imagine every horror movie trope coming to gruesome life. Shadowy figures emerging from the trees, skeletal hands tapping on the window, eyes glinting in the encroaching darkness. As the first fingers of dawn poked tentatively through the forest, I knew I couldn't stay. Driving seemed the only option, even though the thought of heading deeper into this twisted place sickened me. The engine roared to life, the sound jarringly loud in the unnatural silence. I eased the car forward, my headlights slicing a path into the oppressive gloom. I drove for hours, or what felt like hours. Time seemed warped here, stretching and compressing in bewildering ways. The forest became a suffocating blur of sickly green and brown. The road remained stubbornly straight, devoid of any turn or exit. I hadn't seen a single sign of life. No animal tracks, no birds, nothing. It was as if I were the only living thing in this desolate purgatory. Hunger clawed at my stomach, an unwelcome reminder of my all-too-human needs. It was mid-afternoon when I realized my mistake. The gas gauge sat on empty, the needle mocking my desperation. Panic surged like an electrical shock through me. Had it been that low yesterday? Memory blurred, reality itself seemed to waver in this place. Then, like a mirage, a break in the trees appeared. An abandoned house, its windows like vacant eyes, loomed at the edge of the road. It wasn't salvation, but it was something different. Anything different was worth exploring. I pulled the car into the overgrown driveway, noting with a jolt that it was now facing back the way I had come. I got out, legs wobbling, and surveyed the house. It was a haunting testament to forgotten lives. its paint cracked, a porch swing listing on broken chains. Yet the front door stood slightly ajar, a chilling whisper of invitation. Desperate not for answers, but for anything familiar, anything human, I pushed it open. Dust swirled in the beam of my flashlight. Inside, it was a scene of frozen decay. Faded floral wallpaper, a chipped china teacup on a rotting side table, the remnants of a child's drawing on the dusty floor. It was all achingly normal, but twisted into heartbreaking tragedy by the layer of neglect. A noise echoed from upstairs, floorboards creaking. Or was it something else? A ragged breath, perhaps? I froze, the flashlight painting quivering shapes on the walls. "Hello?" My voice cracked. The only response was the pounding of my own heart. With dreadful fascination, I began to climb the stairs, feet moving without conscious decision. Each creak seemed to reverberate through the entire house, announcing my presence to whatever might be lurking in the shadows. The second-floor landing opened into a long, dim hallway. At the end, a single door stood partially open. The flashlight beam fell on a child's bed, its covers thrown back as if someone had bolted from it in terror. And on the wall, crudely scrawled in what looked sickeningly like blood, was a single word. Run. I stumbled from the house, the word run seared into my brain. The rational part of me screamed that it was just a prank, a way to scare some foolish trespasser. But the other part, the part that had woken twitching in my car seat to unseen eyes watching from the woods, knew better. The car was useless. I considered running down the endless road, but which direction? Both back and forward seemed to promise only more desolation, more of this monstrous trap. That's when I saw it. A path snaking into the trees, barely wide enough for a person. It was irrational, venturing away from the only landmark I had. But staying put felt like accepting defeat. The forest swallowed me whole. Branches whipped my face, thorns tore at my clothes. The silence was now absolute, broken only by the rasp of my own labored breathing. Terror fueled my clumsy run, the image of that blood-scrawled warning propelling me forward. Then the trees opened into a clearing. But this was no place of sanctuary. A ring of rusted cars, decades old, formed a ragged circle. Their skeletal frames loomed like the remains of a macabre feast. And in the center, a withered figure hunched on a moss-covered rock. Its threadbare clothes were stained with something dark, and its head hung at an unnatural angle. My first thought was that it was dead. My second was that it was better off that way. As I approached, it shuddered. The head slowly lifted, revealing not a face, but a void. 2 pinpricks of malevolent light burned within that emptiness, locking onto me. It began to rise, a jerky, broken movement. A dry rasp choked from its throat. "Lost, are you?" The sound seemed to scratch its way out from a place of immense suffering. I need to get out of here," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. A grotesque smile twisted the thing's mouth, devoid of lips and gums. "Out! There is no out. This road is a circle. It's beginning its end." "But why? What are you?" It lurched closer, the smell of decay filling my nostrils. We were all travelers once, all yearning for something beyond the ordinary. This road, it calls to that yearning. Its voice became a hiss as it lunged. "And then it consumes." I turned and ran, blind instinct guiding me between the trees. The echoing screeches faded behind me, replaced only by the pounding of my own heart and the ragged gasps for breath. The forest never ended. The sky grew strangely dim, neither day nor night, but a sickly twilight holding everything in its gray grip. Then, up ahead, a flicker. The gas station. Relief washed over me for a heart-stopping moment before reality crashed back in. This was no salvation, only the twisted circle revealing itself. I stumbled towards the pump, no longer caring if something lurked in the shadows. As I lifted the nozzle, there was a whisper of sound behind me. Whirling around, I saw it, not the skeletal monster, but something almost worse. A reflection, my reflection. Yet the eyes that stared back at me were hollow pits, filled with that same malevolent light. My clothes were tattered, my skin a sickly pallor. I had become one of them. Despair washed over me, an icy wave that extinguished any remaining embers of hope. I understood now. This road did not break you with monstrous sights or brutal terrors. It broke you by turning you into the monster yourself, a despairing echo doomed to wander for eternity. The nozzle slipped from my grasp, clattering to the ground. Resigned, I turned to face the woods. They waited, promising not an escape, but a new form of imprisonment. An imprisonment I would have to endure, until the next lost soul was tempted by that fated sign promising a scenic detour.